What do you mean a lot shorter? I mean, everybody thinks I'm 5'8".
So you are Steve Carell?
No.
Over the years, Pawn Stars has seen some incredible and rare items come through their doors. You don't want to miss this because you'll be shocked to see how much the Pawn Stars are willing to pay.
Hey, before we get into the video, be sure to enter our brand new giveaway. We'll be giving away any of these items. It's your choice. To enter the giveaway, leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, turn on notifications, and most importantly, watch the whole video. It's that simple.
4 1-kilo gold bars.
What do you think, Pops?
It's gold.
Obviously, a classic car or a beautiful guitar can net a whole lot of money with the right customer. However, the standard of money in America and around the world is still precious metals, with gold in particular high atop the list of the most valuable things in existence. There's a reason Rick Harrison and the old man named their pawn shop Gold and Silver, and it tracks that the most expensive item they've ever bought would be one of those two alloys. According to the History Channel website, the most money Rick ever shelled out on a single deal was predictably the golden substance itself, giving a customer $128,000 for 4 1-kilo bars. How exactly this person came into all that gold isn't quite clear, but we bet they took their earnings straight to the bank, or maybe a nearby casino. After that trade, they had money to spare. Confused? I'll explain. In every country, including the United States, there's an exchange rate on gold and silver and other precious metals. Considering the average price of gold right now, and accounting for the weight of the bars, that would mean that Rick and the old man did indeed get a deal on that gold. JFK cigar box.
This is John F. Kennedy's cigar box.
Sure is. And inside are the remaining unsmoked cigars.
Notwithstanding today's divided and tumultuously wintry political climate, John F. Kennedy remains as one of America's most beloved and respected former presidents. Even before JFK was elected to the nation's highest office, his family was already basically American royalty thanks to his extremely wealthy father and their connections to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This made the younger Kennedy remarkably popular upon arrival at the Oval Office, and the unfortunately short tenure of his presidency prior to being assassinated gave additional historical importance to everything he did while there. Though not exactly earth-changing, even a simple little cigar box that sat on JFK's desk could be extremely noteworthy and valuable to his biggest admirers. If there were a few cigars left in the box, unsmoked but presumably touched by JFK as he reached for another, that would be even better. Rick Harrison knew all this the moment a man handed him JFK's cigar box and offered him a cool $60,000 for it. Turns out this was a massive steal, as similar items have sold for over $500,000. This was one of those deals where everything truly lines up for the Pawn Stars. The item was real, and there was plenty of authentication to prove that it was indeed the real deal. The owner even had a picture of Kennedy with the cigar box. How rare is that? Kennedy has remained one of the most popular presidents in history, especially after his tragic death, so any items associated with him are valuable, and this one was not only that, but it was well worth the price. 1922 proof piece dollar coin.
Where did you get this?
I won it at a poker game.
Whoa.
One of the rarest coins in American history is the 1922 proof piece high-relief dollar coin. If you ask any coin collector, they would tell you that not only is this one of the most amazing coins you will ever see on Pawn Stars, they would love to own a proof piece dollar coin, and not just this one. It's one of those few coins that are legends in the denomination universe. The seller of the coin ended up winning it in a card game and wanted $20,000 for it when he came into the building. But after an expert came in and took a look at it, that price shot up to $100,000. After Rick figured out a good price point, $80,000, the deal was struck and both parties walked away happy. 1932 Lincoln Roadster.
This is a classic car, Rick.
The 30s was the golden age of cars. It was when cars really began to have style.
It's not very often that Rick makes a deal with a seller that ends with him giving someone actual gold in exchange for an item, let alone a 1932 Lincoln Roadster. But when he was approached by the owner, who goes by the name Uncle Phil, of a 1932 Lincoln Roadster, he was drooling at the chance at owning such a rare vintage vehicle. Uncle Phil got the car from a museum a few years ago and was looking to get $100,000 for it, nothing less. This beautiful ride might be worth the $100,000 he was looking for, but Rick deals in a buy and sell business, and this type of item would be tough to sell because of such a limited market. Uncle Phil was not going to negotiate until the deal of selling him gold came about and the deal was struck for $95,000. I want you to think about that for a second. Rick was willing to give actual gold to this customer in exchange for this car. Gold and silver are a couple of the few items in the world today that can be bought and sold with basically no consequence. And because of the exchange rates, you know exactly what you're getting with them. So for him to give that up in exchange for a car, that shows how rare and important and valuable that 1932 Lincoln Roadster was. In case you were curious, there really is a limited market for the car, and because of that, some models of the car have sold for double what Rick bought it for. 2001 New England Patriots Super Bowl ring.
The very first one I ever actually got to own, that's my 2001 Patriots Super Bowl ring.
Former New England Patriots defensive back Brock Williams showed up at the office one day ready to make a deal for his commemorative 2001 Super Bowl championship ring. It is not often that an actual Super Bowl championship ring makes it into the shop, so Rick was giddy with excitement over the ring when he saw it. What made this ring so collectible was how ridiculously beautiful it was, covered with 143 diamonds and made of 14-karat white gold. It was the first time a ring exceeded the NFL's rule on expense limits. Rick ended up buying it for $2,000 as collateral for a loan, and kept it after Brock never returned to get it. It's now worth $100,000, so while the Pawn Stars didn't drop a fortune on this item, we had to include it on the list for the price it's worth now. They almost made $100,000 off of it. Rick loves this item so much that at times he'll just wear it around the store in order to look even cooler. He loves telling the story of how he got it, and he's got a piece of history now with him. After all, the 2001 victory of the Patriots wasn't just considered a major upset, beating the greatest show on turf. It was the beginning of the Tom Brady dynasty, one that includes a total of 6 Super Bowl victories. And it all started with that one. Sure, it may not have been Brady's ring, but it was still a team member's ring, and that's just as important in its own right. 1932 custom Ford Roadster.
All right, we got a deal, man. I got a pretty cool car.
Two of the most popular items on Pawn Stars are antiques and cars, so naturally when the two concepts get combined into one, big bucks quickly enter the conversation. That was definitely the case when a customer invited Rick and Corey Harrison to his home for negotiations over a beautiful black 1932 custom Ford Roadster, similar to the classic Model B. When cars of this style were first introduced, they cost a cool $490, which even with inflation is just a modest $8,822 today. However, the age of the car, plus the fact that it was in practically perfect condition with only 450 miles on the speedometer after almost 80 years of existence, made this a true one-of-a-kind find. Despite how good things looked, Rick and Corey were understandably a little bit hesitant to make such a big money deal on an extremely old vehicle, until their car expert friend Danny the Count Coker talked them into it. It is now worth over $70,000, which is insane. How would a car cost that much, you ask? Especially an old one like that. It's simple, it's an important part of automotive history. Ford was the one who really kicked off the automotive craze, and the Roadster was another in a long line of models that helped change things for the better in terms of car styles and models. Plus, 1932 was in the early parts of the Great Depression, so getting something for that era that is pristine and not a wreck when it comes to the parts? Yeah, that's rare. So yeah, that's a valuable car. Stephen Stills' 1941 Gibson guitar.
This is a 1941 Gibson SJ200.
Guitars are something that often come through the gold and silver pawn shop, and while some of them are just really cool versions of classic guitars, some of them are indeed ones that are super special, such as a legendary owner. Stephen Stills was a member of the rock and roll group Crosby, Still, and Nash, and is most definitely a legendary guitar player. When a young man showed up with it in the shop, it didn't take very long before an expert verified the authenticity of it. Jesse, his local guitar expert, loved the guitar, a rare 1941 Gibson SJ200, and even let the owner know about it. The guitar itself was worth $75,000 at least, but being owned by Stephen Stills turned that price up another $20,000. After he left, the negotiating began with the seller looking for $90,000, but Rick offered $85,000 and eventually struck a deal. One of the reasons Rick loves guitars is because of how quickly they fly off the shelves at pawn shops, and with this one, we'd be surprised if it wasn't a similar deal. After all, there are all kinds of guitars out there, but to say that you have one from a legendary rock star like Stephen Stills, it's another story entirely. Now, it is unclear as to how much Rick got back from that particular purchase, but something tells us that someone out there was a major Crosby, Still, and Nash fan and scooped it up for themselves. Book of Mormon.
Brought for you a book, the Book of Mormon.
Is it the play or the book?
No, not the play The Book of Mormon. That's another thing entirely. Besides, I'm not sure the Pawn Stars could actually buy that. Although if they tried, they'd probably offer $25 as if that's the best they can do. Anyway, while most people these days have made the jump to movies or TV, the people who still read books really enjoy reading books. Granted, the ones who prove this the most are the sort who would be happy to pick up a shabby, barely put together copy of an old classic and get lost in it as if it were brand new. However, if a book fan is going to actually drop huge bucks on a particular text, it better be pretty darn special. When a singular book is responsible for creating one of the biggest religions in the world today, it's fair to say it reached that level of uniqueness. That was definitely the case with this 1842 copy of a 5th edition Book of Mormon, one of the last printed in the lifetime of Mormonism's founder, Joseph Smith. When a customer brought this into Rick's store, he understandably doubted it could be possibly real, only for expert Rebecca Romney to confirm it was. Given the historical value alone, Rick was willing to drop $24,000 on a book Romney said could probably make him anywhere from $50 to $75,000. You might be thinking, can religious documents really cost that much? Absolutely. You need to think about this from an objective standpoint. When it comes to religious texts, if they're real and really old and prominent, they can cost a whole heck of a lot to a lot of people. A great example of this is the Dead Sea Scrolls. These were mere pages of the Christian Bible spread out amongst jars found in a cave. I kid you not, they were dated back to being the oldest known version of the Bible, and now they're considered priceless, or at the very least, millions per page. So a Book of Mormon that was printed in the time of its founder? Yeah, that's worth a pretty penny. Vic Flick's 1961 Stratocaster guitar.
So where did you get this thing?
This guitar's been with me for years.
See, I told you that guitars were popular at the Pawn Stars place, but this one's a little different than the Stills guitar. But just because a musician's name doesn't instantly inspire millions of fans to celebrate their contributions to music doesn't necessarily mean they didn't heavily impact the medium. For example, Vic Flick is a guitarist who even music experts probably didn't recognize when he appeared on an episode of Pawn Stars, yet he's been involved in some of the biggest records in history. In addition to working with the Beatles, Eric Clapton, Tom Jones, John Williams, and Nancy Sinatra, Flick's iconic guitar playing is featured in just about every 007 movie as the lead player on the James Bond theme. Given Flick's fame, and the fact he was offering the relatively pricey guitar to the shop in person, Rick Harrison knew there was a deal to be made, but he wasn't sure on the price until consulting with guitar expert Jesse Amoroso. After examining the axe and discussing it with Rick and Vic, it was decided that $55,000 was the perfect price for it. Now, sadly, there is a bit of a twist in this tale that isn't so good for the Pawn Stars. Mainly, while the guitar did indeed have a name that was important to music history, that doesn't mean that everyone exactly knew who that person was. So when he went to sell the guitar at auction, it didn't sell that well. Not to mention, it remained sitting on the shelves of the gold and silver pawn shop for some time because people just weren't interested in it. How can that be? Well, even though the guitar was used in certain songs, and he worked with stars, it wasn't him that technically was the star. And while the James Bond theme thing is cool, it's not cool enough apparently to inspire a buy. All in all, this was not only one of the biggest buys in Pawn Stars history, but also one of the biggest losses. Definitely a live and learn lesson, right Rick? 200 pounds of silver.
The old man is crazy about silver. He's going to be like a kid on Christmas morning when he sees this.
The owner, Jeff, of 200 pounds or 3,000 ounces of pure silver, decided it was time to get paid on the investment his father told him about when he was younger. So he wheeled into the shop with sacks and bags of silver. From bars to coins, everything was pure silver. The only issue was a giant silver bar that might have been filled with other metals, so Rick had to test it, which was cool to see how that was done, and found out it was the real deal. The offer then came in for $111,000, but that was the absolute most they could do for the silver because of the limited amount of profit margin it would bring them. But overall, this was one of the most expensive Pawn Star purchases of all time. But, because it was pure silver, it wasn't too much of a risk. You can calculate how much silver and gold are worth as long as you know the basic exchange rates, which Rick no doubt does. So he knows where the upper limits are to make a good deal and make a good profit. Plus, how many times does someone come in with 200 pounds of silver? Mary Ford's 1961 Les Paul guitar.
This belonged to Mary Ford?
Mary Ford.
Guitars have always been one of the more valuable items to come through pawn shops. The ones that date back to the rock era tend to be worth a ton, and always seem to find themselves making it into the shop like this one did. The only difference is that the owner of the guitar showed it to Rick, and then said it belonged to his Aunt Mary, and she used to play it with her husband, Les Paul. It was one of those moments that remains one of the greatest in Pawn Stars history, because they were looking at a 1961 Gibson SG Les Paul guitar that was played by the wife of the man who created it. It was like having Babe Ruth's grandson bring in a signed rookie card of him. It doesn't get much better than that. After an expert confirmed the value of it to be close to $150,000, a deal was made for $90,000. The original Where the Wild Things Are artwork.
We're talking Where the Wild Things Are. These things rarely, if ever, come on the market.
As Pawn Stars continues to get bigger and bigger each and every single year, so does Rick's bank account. He's gone from making some cool deals in a shop to traveling to private sellers and local dealers to make offers on extremely rare and unique items that are worth enormous amounts of cash. This one in particular remains one of the coolest, and that has to do with how rare it is. He was approached by a dealer that had original artwork for the book Where the Wild Things Are, and that made them one of a kind. The original asking price was $350,000. Rick made a play for them at $250,000, and a deal was done. Where the Wild Things Are is one of the classic books in American literature, and was even made into a live-action movie a couple years back. So for them to get artwork from the original book? Yeah, that's not only rare, that's extremely valuable.